Welcome to Leadership Bites with myself, your host, Guy Bloom. This is a leadership podcast where I have conversations with colleagues, I chat with guests, and sometimes there'll be just me talking. You can connect with me at livingbrave.com, and when you enjoy the episode, subscribe and please tell everyone. Okay, let's get this show on the road. So, Chris, I'm going to use the word that I see kids use on movies. I'm stoked. I'm super pleased to have you on this episode of Leadership Bites. So just first of all, thank you so much for making the time.
I did my research on you and I'm fired up to be here. I'm stoked to be with you guys. So let's tear it up.
Brilliant. Now, listen, obviously I know who you are and we'll get into this catalyst moment that threw you into the public domain. But I think just before we do that, if somebody said, hey, who are you and what do you do for a living? How would you introduce yourself? And then we can kick off from there.
Well, obviously, you see behind me, I'm the sheriff, and I didn't start that way. And I always want to preface it by saying being a sheriff is what I do, but it's not who I am. I think we're all kind of a culmination of everything from birth to death. So I love people. I love serving. I love leading. I love competing. My dad was a Detroit police officer. My grandfather was a Detroit police officer. So I grew up hearing great stories. And when I got out of high school, I knew exactly that's my path. And so I started here actually when I was 18 years old. Right. And I got hired full-time at 20, and I've been here ever since. I'm just starting my 29th year. I worked every rank in this entire office, but it's also led me to some of the greatest experiences. I found my wife here as a social worker that worked in the jail. 27 years ago, I married the hot blonde. I got two boys that are 22 and 20. They're both educated. They're just good dudes and very, very proud. I've been on mission trips around the world. I've met the last 4 United States presidents. I wrote 3 books. I've been able to just meet the most incredible people and people like yourself. They have platforms that are able to share a message of hope and unity and protection. It's been an incredible run, and I'm just getting started. So that's the short version.
I already want to vote for you, and I can't. So with that in mind, so listen, there was a catalyst moment, right? That threw you from, a very particular personality who was in the nicest possible way. When I say minding your own business, but you were minding your own business, doing good work in a community, and that was, and then we have these George Floyd situation that we hear about obviously in the UK. These protests occurred, and I saw, and I'm just going to offer what I saw, and why obviously I reached out to you. I saw a man representing a community of fellow law enforcement officers turning around to a group of people, and what I would use the phrase as a developer of leaders, which is situationally sensing, of going, okay, I look a certain way, we've come ready for a certain thing, but do you know what? The road ahead of me is not the road I'm going to take. I'm going to make a choice, and I'm going to be vulnerable, but that doesn't, or I'm going to show my vulnerability, but it's not going to make me vulnerable. And you went into a space where you showed your true self, you engaged with a crowd, and you kept it a crowd, right? Yeah. You didn't let it, but your demeanor and the way that you were stopped it morphing into anything else, call it a mob or whatever you want to call it, but you held it as a crowd with your humanity and your, hey, let me walk with you. So that went around the world, I think, as a symbol of just what was going on in that moment. But as somebody who's developed leaders, I was like, whoa, okay, that's about as good as it gets.
Thank you.
So, and I acknowledge that, and I just wanted to, from a personal level, just say it's why I've spent, I know I was way down the list of people that we could get to you, but I held on, right? So here's what I'd sort of like to kind of maybe get into. I'm not convinced that you think about those things in the moment. You react because of the kind of human being that you are.
Bingo.
So, what are the foundational beliefs that sit within you that go, listen, what happened, but it came from this space? And I think I'd like to hear about that.
Well, first of all, your words are too kind. And even though we're talking 14 months ago, it is as fresh now hearing it from you as it was the moment that it was happening. And when you're talking about, because we're on a leadership platform, a lot of my comments back to you and your listeners and viewers are going to be leadership based. And you are spot on that leaders need to look at a situation. You may come in with one agenda, but when you listen to the customer, the consumer, and at that point, it was the community, the agenda that I came with, which is to clash like everybody else around the country, it flipped, it pivoted because that's not the right response. I saw the people, I saw the anger, I was ticked. I mean, when I saw the video, I'm like, I hated that guy for what he did that represented all the good that we had done evaporated that fast. So I had my own personal agenda, but man, when you saw the people, God, we were outnumbered 50-1. We were microseconds away from the actual clash, which would never have allowed us, you and I, to ever meet because we'd have been a statistic. And it was a moment, like you, into your first question, it was a moment that it was the right thing to do at the right second, literally the second that they asked, walk with us. I couldn't say, hey, give me a day to think about it. Leaders need to realize that you train in peace to perform in chaos. And if you aren't that person in chaos, the street will call you out that fast. If they didn't think that I was authentic by saying, what do you need from me? They would have never have told me. And then when I said, this is what we're going to do, we're going to walk, let's walk, they wouldn't have followed.
Yeah. And so where did that come from, Chris? What was that part of you? So that's what happened. But what's that part of you that you think allowed you to not operate from a place of fear, to fulfill maybe training or the right way to do it? Or what allowed you to react as your true self?
So I think leaders need to always look at the decisions we make have a ripple effect to people even beyond our ability to see, whether you're an organization, a government, a family. And we need to realize that those decisions that you make that have different consequences, those are based on a lifetime of experiences and training and reading. So the answer to your question is, I grew up in a very violent community. I saw my first shooting at 18 years old as an intern. I have been involved with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of death scenes, chases. I was in the dope team, working jails, getting into forcibles. I mean, all those things, they build natural courage. I've been litigated against, sued personally, and then found exonerated and won attacks in the government, in the public eye. There are people that want to attack you. When you overcome all those obstacles, and I'm a competitor, I'm a 4-time Ironman. So all those days of swimming and biking and running and competing on the edge of death, but yet completing to be an Ironman, Guy, I think it's everything. I mean, my mom and dad, they're elderly, but they stuck together. I've seen them come through good and bad times. They're loyal. I look at that in my own family. I've made decisions that I know had positive outcomes. So it obviously works. So how do you serve people when it comes to your family, to show my boys that this is the man you need to be when you pick a spouse, that my boys are learning to pick a wife based on how my wife treats them and treats me? All those things come together. Serving on the mission field, I've been, since 2013, taking my sons at age 15 to mission fields all over the world every year, so they can go for a week in places that you could never, ever, ever find on a map, where they can't give you anything in return, whether it's Haiti, Grenada, Dominican, Honduras. Those lessons right there, I'm going to tell you, that moment that we're speaking of, it was my entire life. Everything that's been together, that's been compiled, it came down to that one moment. That one moment defined who Chris has been his whole life. The world just got to see it the first time.
Right. So, wow. Thank you. And when I think about that, Chris, I think, there's two things here, maybe for me. That one is, when I develop and work with developing leaders, some people have had a storyline that you can see their character has been formed through the experiences that they've had. And then there are some people that end up in a leadership position through, hard work, but maybe circumstance. So they're not sitting on top of a set of child experiences or whatever. They haven't maybe, I've done martial arts all my life. So I've learned, I've learned humility. Why? Because to get good at it, you have to go against all the people that can show you, put you in your place. You learn, and you etc. So it doesn't matter what the route is. It could be horse riding, it could be anything, but you learn, and that's blah, blah. So I'm interested then in your approach to developing elements of what you see good leadership is in people maybe that haven't I wouldn't say by instinct, but by history already got it, and you've just got to kind of shine it. But they're intelligent, they want to do it, but they haven't got a background of maybe sports or parents that held them to account or whatever it is. So what's your approach to teaching leadership to people that in your context have to lead and hold space and be of a certain kind of characteristic to survive and work in a community?
So I think each one of us need to look at our own lives as a silo that we sometimes have control over, or sometimes we don't. I cannot control being born the youngest of four between two parents that have worked hard their whole life, struggled financially, that a family of six who are non-athletes, that have filed bankruptcy. Like, how did I become an Ironman? How did I become financially free? How did I become a leader when I didn't have that set up for me? But my parents taught me other lessons. My life taught me other lessons, and spirit experiences made up for that. So I think you are spot on that some things happen to people that those situations maybe give them a bigger opening to step into be an effective leader. But I think it comes down to our individual choices. I choose early on my path of where I'm going. Whether when I first came in, I'm going to tell you a story. Just about 2 offices from where we are right now. At 18 years old, I sat down with my senior Marine deputy, and I was being hired seasonal to work the boats on the lakes to keep people calm and quiet during our summertime. And that senior deputy asked me a question at 18 years old, Chris, by the time you finish your career, what would you have wanted to accomplish? And I said, I want to be the sheriff at 18 years old. It took me 27 years. And the day I was appointed sheriff, December 23rd, 2019, I just happened to be that day with my wife at a Walmart. And lo and behold, she had heard that story guy. I saw this guy walk in. He's in his late 50s. He's got a cane. He goes, Chris Swanson. And I look at him. I recognize his face. And I said, Doug Miner? He goes, yeah, man. He goes, congratulations. And he just started talking about what I just told you. I said, Jamie, this is a story I've been telling you. I told you when I got here, I was going to do this. The day I was appointed, I saw the same guy that I saw at 18. It took me a long time to get there. When I was broke, I figured out a way not to be broke again, how to live debt-free, how to do that. When I decided to be a bodybuilder in 2000 is because I saw myself in a mirror and I thought, what the heck? Like, how did this happen? So I became, same thing with writing books, whatever it is. I think leaders, doesn't matter where you are, you can lead, and it doesn't require a rank. It doesn't require a contract. It doesn't require money. You can be a leader in any situation you are as soon as you decide to lead yourself. Like, I had to take control of my circumstances, whether they were ones I could control and ones I couldn't, and then set my goal. Like, this is the mission. And I think it's important that we all have, what is our next mission? Just like when you compete as a martial arts expert, I've seen you're on the front covers of magazines. You know, you don't go into a spar and think, you know what, I can't wait to get knocked out. You know, I can't wait to go in and feel like I'm going to get beat. You go in there with the attitude, I'm going to compete at my best, and I'm going to win. Life is a competition. And we sometimes see people in leadership positions that have failed as a leader. That doesn't define you. There are a lot of people that are leaders right now listening, watching, but you are holding yourself back because you think, I have to get this to be a leader. No, I started leading Chris way back years ago, which got me to where I'm at now.
Well, I love that. And I'm hearing quite a few things in there. I talk about leader of self. I'm not the only person that does that, but you've got to have, I get that. I'm hearing about conscious choice. Yes. Yeah, of course, there's always, life is complex. It can be easy, but by golly, it can hand you continual issues and problems. So that's true. But there is there's the analogy of the car crash and the driver gets out and goes, oh my God, I nearly died. And the passenger gets out and goes, I'm alive. Right. Yeah. It's my reaction to it. So you're talking about conscious choice. I look in the mirror and I go, hold on, my friend, conscious choice. I can go, well, it's too much to deal with now, or I can go, no, I'm going to do something about it. So, but what I'm really hearing, and this is something I'm very intrigued by, is there's something about the one-dimensional leader. I only lead here. I'm only a leader in this space. And it doesn't mean that you can't be good at it. But for depth, I think, for depth and for multiple experiences that are feeding each other, so each time you learn in one place, it adds value in the other.
Right. Yeah.
There's something about your willingness or your curiosity or your inherent desire to be challenged. There's 100 reasons maybe why. But actually, it can't be just about a leadership there's something more, isn't it? It's about being a leader in life, not hierarchically.
That's right.
But I'm not passive here. And I think that's maybe what I'm hearing, that do you encourage, what's your encouragement to people about saying it's about your growth as a human being as much as it is your ability to do the job and maybe pass exams to prove that you can operate at that level? Do you encourage that, holistic, you need to grow?
So I look at it as life is a big circle and it has pie slices. And in the middle of that circle is you. It's Guy, it's Chris, it's Kevin, it's Todd. We're in the middle, right? And all these things in our circle of importance could be family, it could be money, it could be, your kids, it could be fun, all those things that allow us to feel complete, right? Each one of those impact the other one. And if any one of them is out of balance or you're failing, it's going to keep you out of balance and it's going to have a spillover on everything else. Like if I'm a jerk at home and then I come here to be a sheriff, that's going to come over here. If something happens here and I blow this and it creates a financial burden on my family, those are interdependent. If I don't train 6 days a week, if I don't compete as a 48-year-old, where everybody told me my whole life, just wait till you're 30, wait till you're 40. No, that's an excuse that you're using to keep you suppressed to where you need to be. If I don't physically train, then I don't have the attitude, the sharpness. So I look at that and says, listen, in the middle of that circle, who's the responsible party? What's the common denominator? You. So if your family's broke, fix it. Lead the family. If your employment, if your career is broke, better it, leave it, choose something else. If it's your kids, like every one of those, we are responsible. And I think we live in a culture, whether it's in the US or in the UK or anybody listening now, is we want to have all these different other reasons why things happen. You can't do that. And it's not going to happen overnight. Like I didn't become, and I always joke about this being a 30-year overnight success. Like you and I see the end result of a lot of people. We see the end result, but we don't remember all the journey that it took to become are you a 6-degree black belt? Is that what I read?
No, but don't worry. I'm senior in what I do, so don't worry.
Yes, you're senior. That didn't happen overnight, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And being on the cover of a magazine didn't happen on overnight. So if I'm on that journey, all I need to do is don't look at Guy Bloom or Chris Swanson as an enemy. Look at us as a force multiplier. And that's why I tell people success is best effort over time. Best effort over time. It will always lead to a win. And I don't know when that's going to be, but keep hammering it. So there's things in my life that I think really, I'm a Christian, so I have a biblical foundation of how to treat people, how to love. I serve. I continually serve. As a leader, the higher I went, the more I served. I'm very, very giving of my money, my resources, my time, my attention. And I think people they resonate with that. When it comes to being a competitor, the older I get and the more races and events and training and bodybuilding I do, people respect that. Same thing, how I treat my staff, how I live my life, how I handle my finances, how I have educated. Guy, I was a non-educated individual. I started my 11th grade year at high school with a 1.9. I just wanted to be a cop. That's all I wanted to do. But somebody planted a seed in my 11th year, caused me to want to do something more. I said, I'll go to community college. I'll just get that, be done. And someone planted a seed there. And then I said, okay, I'll finish that. I'll go get a bachelor's degree. Dr. Perlman planted another seed. I ended up getting a master's degree. I'm the only one in my entire bloodline to ever get an advanced degree. What did that lead? It leads me to being on faculty at the University of Michigan since 1997, pouring into students and encouraging them. And so that's why I think leaders have a huge burden, that this isn't just for your life or your families. Think of the lives you're touching. Think of the lives that your podcast is touching. People you won't even know names or faces. But if you're not the guy in the center making it happen, the people won't hear your message.
So there's something there that I love, which is, take up space. Don't take other space, right? But take up space, right? So don't steal from others, but be something, make ripples, have an impact. Otherwise kind of, why, what are you? So I'm really interested in, when I meet you, when I say meet you, in this way, you're a physical presence, right? You have an energy, you're a man of some physical stature, and you're in a role that has to balance, I guess, in many ways, making decisions that, can be, can be very severe for somebody at the other end of it, through to dealing with people that require care. And I'm fascinated because we don't have it in the UK in the same way. The police are not armed, so they have to, generally speaking. So I'm fascinated by how the role of an officer, or how you work with people in the sense of strength, but not the caricature of it, not shouting and and being dominant. Yes. And I wonder just your thoughts on what is the type of strength that says it's very clear that I am strong. Don't take it to a place where it's got to be proven.
Yeah.
And
that's a great question.
Yeah. So I'm wondering how you either A, do it yourself, or B, encourage it, or to junior people that are looking up going, how do you do that?
Well, I'll start by saying there was a famous boxer that came from Detroit. His name was Joe Louis. And Joe Louis said, if you have to say you is, you ain't. So you and I have a command presence, and we shouldn't have to say a word. If you have to say it, then you ain't got it. And a lot of that command presence is not just physical stature. It is how you handle yourself. So not everybody's going to have the temperament of Chris Swanson. I'm choleric sanguine. So you and I, Guy, I can tell you're a hard charger, right? If somebody says, Guy, Chris, we need you to build a ladder to the moon, we're going to be like, where do we get the wood? We're going to try to figure it out, right? I'm also an outgoing guy. And my temperament may not be what yours is, but I can tell you, we have gifts that are internal. We have temperaments that are in our DNA. That's what you use. I have seen some really strong people that are not choleric, not sanguine, but they're very melancholy. They're like the Steve Jobs. He's not an outgoing guy, but what he did was he created a culture that has impacted the world while he's long gone. And then you have our phlegmatics that are peacekeepers, our Gandhis, our Nelson Mandelas. Gandhi healed an entire nation without even firing a shot or carrying a weapon. How do we do that? So to your point, command presence is using the internal gifts you have in a way that protects, serves, and unifies. So I've gotten myself out of more jams using my mouth and my heart than ever pulling my pistol. Are there times I may have to pull a weapon? Absolutely. That's the protection side. But when you have the heart and the mind to serve people, You can do that and break down those barriers. The reason I train and like you, I think physically that's important to people is because that command presence, I believe, works for me. It works for leaders that I respect, is a solid, strong mind, a solid, strong spirit, and a solid, strong body. Mind, body, and spirit. When you have that, you walk into a room and the whole temperature changes.
Absolutely hear that. And I think each one of these topics is its own podcast. But,
yeah, we might have to go do a series.
I'm way ahead of you if that opportunity ever comes. I've seen that you have a podcast that you do. Is it what's it?
Black and Blue.
Black and Blue with the gentleman, right. It was the Hugs guy. Is that right? Is that?
Yeah, free hugs. Ken Wadake Jr. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So that's I should have.
We need to have you on our podcast. You'd be great.
Boom. So
noted.
We're there. So command presence is a fascinating thing. And I think what I'm hearing is there's something about you've got to believe. I call it umbrella beliefs, which is if you believe in something that's bigger than you are, like an umbrella, the only way it works is by being bigger than you, right? And when you're in positions of fear or conflict, if what I believe in is bigger than my anxiety or bigger than the situation I'm in, and you see me operating from a space of belief rather than doubt, i.e. I doubt myself, therefore I'm trying to control you. But if I want to offer, hey, listen, let's not have this argument because actually I don't, not because, I'm scared of you, but because I don't want to have this argument with you, then there's something I think I'm hearing from you, which is people can trust your intent if it's true. Heck of a lot more. And that's much more powerful than trying to command through authority or assert yourself, if I've heard that correctly from you.
And not only is it easier, Guy, it's sustainable. Like if I have to tell you to respect me, you're only going to respect me until you decide not to, or one of us leaves.
Right.
But if I in an environment where you want to respect me, and it doesn't matter where I go, where you go, there's a lifelong loyalty. And I think when you look at the greatest leaders around the world, living and dead, they are the people who humble themselves while they are exonerated and elevated versus the people who elevate themselves and all their sentences start with pronouns, I, me, but yet they get humbled over time. And so I've just taken a playbook out of people in history that I respect, whether it's military leaders, foreign leaders, athletes, people in my own family, and I've kind of fly-specced what exactly made them the person that I respect. And that's what it is. And you can't give it. It's got to be earned. You can't just take it. It's got to be fought for. And that's why I think the command president is so important. And I think leaders need to realize, what is my gift and how can I use it? And I'm going to tell you a little fun fact, reference that protest we talked about. When you live in an urban environment, the street PhD counts. So these folks have been lied to by government, lied to by police, lied to by white folks. They have seen people say things that never follow through. When I stepped in that crowd and I took my helmet off, you used the word vulnerability, you are spot on. I didn't feel vulnerable, but it showed vulnerability. And sometimes people think that's a weakness. That was my strength that day. It became my battle armor because I stepped in the crowd and said, listen, we're going to do this. And they either thought this dude is crazy or he just spoke to me. As soon as I said, let's walk, we started walking. This is not on camera. And about 150 yards after that moment, we're walking back east towards the original location. And I see one of my tactical guys to my right, and we're just looking because we don't know what's going to pop off, right? We were all just taking this. It just happened like 47 seconds ago. But I looked to one of my guys to my left. His name is Ryan Dobbs, one of my sergeants, and he was in full tack gear, helmet, ready to go. I looked at him and I said, is the police department safe? And he says, it's good. Now, this guy's a 6-year Marine, recon, battle-tested, legit, right? And he's 3 times my size. I say to him, I said, where are the people? And he looks at me and he says, they're all following you. And I knew right then and there, Guy, that my command presence there was not because I was a bully. It's not because I was dominating them. It wasn't because I was a jerk. I took the narrative as we're making history, like not me, you and me and me. And I was high-fiving people, and I didn't realize that people were coming from their houses and they want to be a part of it. So let me just say, you can be who you are, but you better train in the peace. So when that moment comes, your command presence shows, because I am first-hand testimony. It can change the world.
So there's something here then about servant leadership creates fellowship, right? You know, so me, and here's the interesting thing, and I'm pronouns are quite important here, which is I'm not in service to you, but I want to be of service to you.
Yes.
Right. So I'm not submissive.
Right.
Some people hear the word servant. Right. Oh, you got to be submissive to. No. I'm of service to you. And if you combine, if I truly believe that, and you see me believing that, then actually the chances are we can meet in the middle. And, you know, I'll follow you and you follow me, and we're not sure who's in charge here, but actually that probably doesn't matter that much, you know, if it goes to a good place. So that's, I hear that. And okay, so listen, you know,
don't you think sorry.
No, go on, Chris.
Well, you go back to the servant leadership. I think it's important for leaders to realize that no matter how much influence you have to train yourself to serve.
Yes.
Like you can't get so caught up in your position or your influence or even your finances where you forget what it was like to serve when you had nothing. When you have much is required. So the reason I go to different places and I put myself in a submission is not because I am submissive to authority, like you say, but it's kind of like a full mount. Like I want to be in a position where I am vulnerable. How do I get out of it? How do I do that? If you're not training that way, then when the time comes to serve, they won't see that authenticity we talked about.
Yeah.
So get out there and serve, expecting nothing in return.
And I like that. And I think as leaders in an organization internally, the equivalency to me there is you turn up to do a forum or a town hall event, and the audience turns on you a little bit, you know, and what are you going to do? You're going to try and lead through authority, or are you going to be vulnerable? You're going to take your metaphorical seniority off, you know, and actually go, hey, maybe sit on the side and go, right, this doesn't feel right. What's going on? You know, whatever it is. But so there's these things that I hear there, and I think come across very, very strongly. So I'd like to kind of move into your focus here, and I see, because I'm kind of vicariously living through you by sort of watching your social media and things like that. So talk to me about where your energy is right now, because there's a duality here. You know, I see you having a strong social media presence, and of course, you know, you've got a job that, you know, is very specific. So, you know, what are the versions of you that exist in the world right now? It'd be great just to hear about that, from podcasts through to books through to future intent. I mean, just, you know, hit me with it all.
So I will tell you this. I've always said I want to live the life of 100 people. And so there's a lot of Chris that's out there. And I joke, I say, there's a lot of folks that know what Chris does, but only Chris knows everything Chris does. And honestly, if you look at any kind of a hard charger or somebody who is just, you know, out there making things happen, my greatest gift is also my greatest curse. And that is influence. I love to be an influencer and an inspirational influencer that breathes life into people. So do I look at my life and say, okay, in this moment, this is all I am? I can't, because the brand of Chris has a lot of different principles. It's got a lot of discipline. So I look at it as, you know, I'm a full smorgasbord that feeds people. So some people I feed politically. And I show people, when you're an elected official, you can still do it right, even though you maybe are from a party that some people feel this way, that way. Don't look at anything. Look at what I'm doing. That's why don't listen to Chris says, watch what Chris does. When it comes to a police officer, I love being a cop. I love it. Even all last year, I told people from all over the world, listen, I have the greatest job on the planet. We just got to get better at it. When it comes to being a husband, an athlete, when it comes to being just me by myself, all of that happens. It happens because I make it a priority that when when I believe that my future, and I joked when we first started that I'm just getting started. I honestly believe that. So I think that the world of influence is only going to get bigger for me because my vision is that big. And I believe that having a great impact over people, when I say things that I'm about to say to you, to some, it may be shattering. But when I say that I want to speak to the masses, I want to influence the world, I want to have a hand into people's lives that have been trapped in human trafficking and addiction and people who felt there's no hope, race relations, global relations. I want to be that guy that they never thought could do it because I've been that guy my whole life. Like, how did that guy do it? Here's how I did it. I'm not selfish with my information. That's why I have a presence. That's why I write books. And that's why I literally do most of what I do live. I edit very little of anything I put out. You see it. Nothing's polished about this because I think we live in a world and a time that's hungry for that. And whether it's additional political offices, I believe that's going to happen. Whether it's using our podcast to speak to people about what white folks think and black folks think and police think, and I believe that's going to happen. Whether it's the Us United brand, which is being built out as a brand to bring people together around the world, I think that's important. I mean, everything that I'm doing, I see it as a competition. I see it as my own Ironman, and the distance is long, and I'm still running it. So I love what I do. I'm, as I said, I'm excited for what the future is. I have some ideas where it's going, but I'm not an idiot when it comes to timing and strategy. And when I swing the bat, I'm going for grand slams.
If you know what, if you're a company, I'll buy shares in you, Chris. I would. Well,
that's humbling. I mean, you see a lot of folks. I mean, I appreciate that.
I do, literally. There is a podcast of me talking to Duke Stump, who was the marketing director at Nike. And about halfway through, you could see my head tilt to the side. And I went, internally, oh, you're awesome. So I'm having I'm having one of those. So that's some feedback for you. So listen, tell me now. Yeah, I'm listening to this podcast, and I think, and I'll put all the links to you, so you don't have to,
thank you so much
into a marketing mode, and I'll make sure those are all tidy up. But if somebody was going to say to you, hey Chris, listen, be it a podcast or be it a book, or I've got a couple of books where I go, look, you don't have to read it all, but you definitely want to understand this one.
Yeah.
So have you got any kind of if there's one or two things you should either read or listen to or pay attention to, to move forward in this world, then can I suggest the following? What would you give me?
Oh, that's tough, man. It's tough because, I wrote 2 leadership books that are real life experiences. I wrote a children's book that inspired me through my growing up. I mean, the hundreds and hundreds of videos on different platforms. I will have to tell you, and it's not because this conversation started because of the moment, but it's the 10 seconds when I ask, what do you need us to do? And they responded, walk with us. That I take a step back, I pump my fists, I take a couple deep breaths. My whole life and everything I've done came out of that moment, guy, that moment. Not because it went viral, because that moment, when it comes to police officers, the ultimate it goes back to even the Spartans from Sparta. Death is validation, and a noble death is noble validation. And as police, we're always trained to prepare for the fatal confrontation, right? And when you are involved and engaged in a fatal confrontation, did you perform like a warrior? Did you perform like a Spartan, right? When it comes to, I'm also a licensed paramedic. When I became a medic at 20, it's your first cardiac arrest on your own. Did you perform at your best? And it was at that moment, guy, where my whole life and everything about it all came down to there. That's who Chris is as a police officer, as a friend, as a leader, as a husband. That is my moment because I see it. There was no do-overs. So I wish I could say, read chapter 3 of my book. It's probably a good chapter. Go listen to podcast number 12. It's a great topic. But I'm going to tell you, if you want to know who Swanson is, that moment tells me to keep doing what I'm doing.
So I think I'm also hearing in there, never stop. Keep turning the handle. Be it reading, be it fitness, be it thinking, reflecting, be it challenging yourself. It doesn't matter. We've all got our own battles, but just don't stop. Keep moving forward. And then when your moments come, you then have more of an opportunity to be the best version of yourself because there's more of you there, right? Because you're learning, you're reading, you're exposing yourself to challenge. So every day, every year, every whatever it is, when something crops up, you're just that better version of yourself. But if you're just going to say, I've reached a certain age, I don't really bother now, I'm kind of waiting for death. Well, guess what? Yeah. And so there's something
You've already died. You've already died.
Yeah.
You're just waiting to be buried, as they say. Yeah. You know, and that's a great point, because remember I said all those little things we do in life, like right now, you're doing this podcast, you're running your business. You don't even know the life lessons you're teaching yourself that could be used 5 years from now in something completely different. And it takes you back to, from Ironman. Now, Ironman is 140.6 miles, right? 2.4 mile swim, 112 on the bike, and then a marathon, all back to back to back. They're all over the world. My first Ironman in 2007, I was overwhelmed with the amount of physical strain your body can go under at one time. And I remember during the run, I'd already been running since, swimming since 7, and get off that, jump on the bike. And it was my second 13.1 mile loop. And I was exhausted. I've never experienced this kind of pain and trauma. And the story of my book, Tinman to Ironman, it's the story of the green chair. I was running, it's dark out. And I literally felt physically like I'm going to die. Like I'm 210 pounds. I'm not a triathlete by stature. I'm not that guy, but I wanted to be an Ironman. Well, let me just tell you this. I got over to the green chairs about 15, 20 yards from the side of the road. 2 dudes were standing there. And I said, can I just sit down? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. So I sat down and I tell the story in the book and I put my head back and I almost go to sleep that fast. I was so exhausted. And all of a sudden, they didn't know if I was going to die or what, right? I don't know who these cats are. It's in Florida, Panama City Beach. And I hear this conversation they're having. They're like, man, is he okay? I can't respond, right? I'm just resting. And he's like, I don't know. Should we call the medics? He goes, I don't know. And then the one guy said, listen, if he's going to be an Ironman, he's going to get up and finish this race.
Ooh.
And it just went in this gear. And I got up, I turned to the guy and said, thank you. And I finished that freaking race and I became an Ironman, and again and again and again. And I'm going to tell you, it's those moments, like, I don't even know who these dudes are, but it's that. So like, there's not just one moment, it's a microcosm of all these moments. And the more you can put yourself out there to experience them, that's what I'm telling. Don't let age or addiction or disability or money, just get out there and experience it. And if you want it, it's going to happen, and it's going to teach you for when you really need it.
Okay. So listen, I'm going to go for a run in a minute, and I'm going to, even if I can't find my running shoes,
man, just run again.
And listen, I love it because I think it is. People say to me all the time, Guy, how do I get more impact, more gravitas?
Yes.
And one person said to me, do I just have to get older? I go, well, it is a strategy, but it's not a very good one. So the best thing to do is expose yourself to life to the greatest of your ability.
Yes.
So the presence of you is bigger. And I think that's what I'm hearing in what you're saying. You'll have learned more. You'll have learned more about yourself. You'll have failed and succeeded, but you will be more, but you've got to expose yourself to more. So
and there's a lot of leadership cliches out there and tweets and all that. But I think what you're saying, and I agree with wholeheartedly, is, to that guy who says, or girl, do I have to get older to get wise? No. Wherever you are right now, go out and pick an actionable step and just do it. And don't be scared. Like, it's totally different for me, totally different for you. But the reason I still compete, it's not because it makes me feel better. It's because I want to stay in the game of competition. It's easier for me to say, well, 20 years ago when I did this, those were 20 years ago. What are you doing now? And I think that by experience in life, it doesn't even have to be a competition. Because I talk to people all the time they don't want to be athletic, but they want to do something different. All right, well then go out there and take a stand for something. Go write the book that you've always wanted to write. That's how I wrote my first book, because some guy said, you got a great story. I'm like, I know, write it. Okay. And I just listen to super smart people. So I think you don't have to ask Guy Bloom or Chris Swanson, what's the best way to be to that? You already know it. The question is, do you want to do it? Take action. And that's why we like the podcast. Every podcast we end, I always tell Ken or my guests, I'm like, all right, what's the final thought? Like, why did we come here? I know I came here because you and I are talking about leadership principles that are going to change businesses, governments, families, people, just from this podcast. I know it. Otherwise, why do it?
So listen, on that note, I have this absolute recognition that I could literally go on to the point where you go, Guy, I've got to go. But I'm going to respect time. I'd rather
No, keep going. Listen, I don't even know how long we've been on. But
well, about 50 minutes. But so listen, okay, well, there's one last thing then is I've noticed, and it's going into a slightly more serious space, but but I've got two boys, I recognize it. There is, I see, I think it's, and just, I may have this wrong, but I think I'm referring to things like Ignite and Ghost and things like that. But I see you very much publicizing what's going on in some of the darker corners and the successes that you're having there. And I think that's something we don't get in the UK. You know, something goes seriously wrong, then we presume that something's then gone right. But you publicize that and you bring things very much, you know, into the public space. Is that usual? Is that very much a you thing? Talk to me about that, because it's almost saying, listen, we're out there. You need to know the successes we're having, but also at the same time, the battle that we're fighting. And I'd just like to get your thoughts on that.
I'll use this analogy. When I talk to my son Riley's and Jordan, when I talk to them and I want to ask them about something good to happen in their life and something bad, I don't want them to filter it. I don't want them to edit it. I just want to hear them for real. And if my kids are going to tell me something that's going to edify me or disappoint me, I still want to hear it. It changes my love for them no less. Like they're my blood, just like your kids. No matter what they say to you, you are going to take a bullet for them, right? I feel the same way when it comes to the public. Like I'm going to tell them the good, the bad, and together we're going to get through it. And I have found that the more authentic you are by saying, hey, this is where we screwed up. This is where we did great. This is where we succeeded. These are the people we're helping. You create a loyal following, a loyal support that, again, I believe in our world, whether it's law enforcement, white people, or especially elected officials, that has been missing. And I think it's hard for us to acknowledge when we do wrong. Just yesterday, I brought in a group of deputies that I made a comment in front of at a baseball game that, you know, I was a competitor and we were getting mollywopped. And I'm like, guys, seriously, can you even play? I felt bad because they were my staff, but I got so competitive. I had to bring them in, man, and I apologized. And I said, listen, I know that I'm the sheriff, but I'm a man and I apologize. Do you forgive me? And I had each one of them tell me, yes, I forgive you. Yes, I forgive you. Like, it's okay to be that way. And the reason I do all that I do on all those platforms is because I believe in my heart that if I show it's okay to do it, more people are going to follow. And the consumer that we talk to is the public. It's the community. It's Michigan. It's America. It's the UK. It's the world. And polished media is done. People want to see authenticity.
Yeah, and I look at things like the Joe Rogan podcast and think, you know, why did that become? And he sold it for, you know, a gazillion dollars now. But the point is, you know, why did it become true? And he tells that story of, you know, Joe, nobody's going to listen to a podcast that lasts up to 3 hours. People want sound bites, and his motives were to have good conversations and to, you know, hear. And actually, why is he the biggest podcast in the world? Because people want the long form conversation. They want to hear people not balancing a soundbite, and they want to hear Elon Musk talking gibberish for an hour. That's fine, but actually, I can see his truth in there. And you know, and actually, he's human. He's a little bit crackers, but he's very honest. He's a bit. He's actually got some self doubts, but at the same time, he's driven. He's human.
Yeah.
And he's not a marketing tool. So I think what I'm hearing there from you is nobody, you and I weren't born with social media in the way that it is. We almost didn't know what we're doing with it. And I think people in leadership have become very fearful of their brand being affected. So they stay vanilla and generic.
That's right.
And they're trained to dodge questions. And I think I'm hearing you saying, no, don't be fearful of it.
Do you remember when I first started? I said, Guy, you can ask me anything. There's nothing off limits. And I don't use notes. I don't use a script, even on all the social media. I just know these are the points we're going to carry, and this is what we're going to talk about. So just be real. And when people see that, you get guys like Guy Bloom and Joe Rogan.
So tell me then, this is my honestly last one then. Tell me what it
is. Keep going, man. This is great.
I keep saying this. This will be my 21st last question, which is, what does Chris Swanson struggle with? What's the stuff?
Validation.
Talk to me about that.
I have such a desire to please people that in a room of 1,000, if that person I didn't connect with or said something, I'd be like, why would they say that? Like, why? My staff here, Todd and Kevin that are watching, the first question after this podcast is over with, I want to be like, all right, how'd that go? I want to know. And they're going to tell me the bad. They're also going to tell me the good. They're going to tell me what I could have done different, what they loved. But if I feel that I have failed and I don't get validated, it is crushing to me. And I had a great time. I was close with Dave Ramsey, who's a financial expert some time ago. And we were at a dinner and I asked him a question and it led him to say, your biggest struggle is validation. I looked at him. I said, how did you know that? He said, because it happens to me too. As big as we get, we want to be validated that we're on the right path. And so I just told my girl last night, Jamie, I said, I'm going to tell you this, no matter what happens, like we graduated our first full female class for our Ignite program yesterday. And one of the girls, you may catch it, is actually going to prison, but she still graduated after 3 months, knowing she's going to prison. And I made a comment. I said, whenever someone critiques what I'm doing, I got to continue to tell myself, if my heart tells me it's the right thing, I don't care. Like, I don't care. There's people that hate puppy breath and sunshine. That's not my audience. I'm going to look for the people that I know believe in me, that believe what I'm doing is the right thing, not to sell books or to get another piece. That'll all come naturally. And so, long answer to a short question again, it's validation. That is my biggest struggle. And if 10's good, 1,000's better. Content is my second one. You asked for one, that's my second one. Sometimes I'm not content with what I have, and I know hard chargers like you struggle with that probably as well.
Well, that's it. Yeah, and I very much, I get that, why are you doing so much? Well, because I can't not.
Yeah, exactly.
It just is what it is. Aren't 3 black belts enough? Well, apparently not. No. So it's one of those. Right. So listen, Ken, I'm going to say this possibly wrong. Naradaki, am I saying that?
Yeah, Nawadake. Okay. Ken Nawadake Jr.
How did you meet him? How did that come to be? Tell me that, because it's a beautiful pairing, and as a podcast, black and blue podcast, again, I'll put the link in, but how did that come to be?
We can't be farther apart. His family's from Nigeria. They live in San Diego. I'm a white dude whose family came from Sweden that lives in Michigan. He had a moment in 2016 when he was a Nike athlete that after the Boston bombings, he went out to Boston and just stood out there because as a runner, he wanted to give support. And he had one shirt made, and it said free hugs. And as people ran by, they obviously weren't going to be the winners, but he'd give them a free hug. The race director, which he was already doing in LA and all up and down the West Coast, said, hey, can you come back and you have a message? Because I saw people hug a black dude wearing a free hug shirt. Well, that started his moment. And then protests started happening. Breonna Taylor, all these moments happened. So he actually went to one of the protests that was local, and he'd already grew up in LA where Rodney King was protested for obvious reasons. And he just had that in him. Well, one of the protests he went to, it was very contentious, and he's an ambassador for unity, right? So he had the cops on one side and the protesters on the other side, and he's back and forth. And he's like, bro, just give me a hug. So he's hugged a couple of protesters. And a cop behind him, Chris Funzy, a big old boy, he goes, "Hey man, can I get one of them hugs?" He goes, "Sure." And he goes up to hug him. He's like a Goliath. And that's the photo that they got, which made his moment viral, and kaboom. Well, he started going to protest all over the place. And when our moment happened, the same connection that got you here, one of our producers, Luke McKay, saw what he was doing out there. And if you know Ken Wadike Jr., he maybe gets to 1% of his emails and 3% of his text messages. He's just that guy. His voicemails are full. Yeah. Well, he just happened to send him an email, Luke did, and he found it. Like, even if he asked Ken, he's like, "I don't know how I found it." But I answered him like, "Yeah, I'll come out to Michigan." No joke. Didn't even know it was me. But he had seen the video happen on May 30th when he was out in California. But this is July. This is June, July. He flies out here to do a quick podcast, just like we're doing right now, on something completely different. We meet, and in 5 minutes, I knew, I'm like, this dude's for real. So we started joking. We recorded this podcast for his side, for his Facebook people. And at the end, I'm like, "Man, you're an athlete." He goes, "Yeah." I said, "Let's go for a run." He's like, and we start back and forth. We went for a 5-mile run. It was hotter than heck. He comes over to my house. My wife meets him. We hang out till like midnight 30. He's supposed to leave on a Saturday. I was preaching on Sunday. And so he's like, "I think I want to see this guy preach. I want to see him preach like white boys preach, or like the fellas preach," right? So I laid it down. He, at the end of that service, he was like, "We need to do a podcast." And he goes, "It's called Black and Blue." And Guy, as soon as he said that, I'm like, "This is it. You're black. I'm white. You're a protester. You're a social justice professional. I'm a cop. There's nobody doing this." We did our first pilot, and our chemistry was just spot on. And I get to answer questions that he can't answer, and he gets to answer questions that I can't answer, but it's yet answers to questions everybody needs to know. And that's the story of Ken and Chris.
Boom. On that note, you have been an absolute star. I've loved it. You're a brilliant character, but you're an honest. You wear your heart openly, and there's a strength in you from that. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to get you to stay for a few moments just while I stop everything and make sure it saves. But from me and listeners to you, sir, thank you very much. That's it, so I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please share so others get to hear about us, and subscribe so you keep up to date on new episodes. Also visit livingbrave.com if you want to connect with me and find out more about executive coaching, team effectiveness, and changing culture. Oh, and of course you can buy my book Living Brave Leadership on Amazon. So on that note, see you soon.